You ever notice how the loudest person in the room rarely holds your attention for long? We've all been to dinners or gatherings where someone talks non-stop, trying to prove they know everything. But you and we've lived long enough to know something different. Real respect doesn't come from making noise, it comes from presence. I was having coffee with my neighbor Walt last week. He's 82, still mows his own lawn, still wears those crisp button-down shirts, like he's headed to church every day. We were talking about leadership and life, and he said something that stuck with me. "You want to know who gets the most respect in any room?" he said, stirring his coffee real slow. "It's the one who listens first and speaks last." It reminded me how powerful silence can be, not just the absence of noise, but the kind of silence that commands attention, that draws people in without pushing. It's not about holding back, it's about holding steady. And especially for folks like us, past 60, who've seen more than a few seasons come and go, that kind of quiet confidence can speak louder than any speech. See, there's a reason why some folks walk into a room and instantly change the energy without saying a word. It's not magic. It's something they've cultivated. And I want to talk with you about how to do that, not by changing who you are, but by leaning into what you've already learned. When we're younger, there's pressure to talk fast, prove our point, be heard. But with age comes this quiet wisdom, a shift. We begin to realize that people don't remember everything you say, but they remember how you made them feel. And when you speak only when needed, when your words are few but meaningful, people listen. Because they know you're not just filling space, you're offering something solid. I think about my friend Marlene. She's 74, teaches watercolor to beginners at the community center, and rarely raises her voice. But let me tell you, when she speaks, everyone in the room leans in. She's not interested in small talk or gossip. When she shares something, it's thoughtful, grounded. And because of that, she carries a kind of weight that louder people just don't have. That's the power of selective speech. It tells others you value words, that you think before you speak. And in today's world, where everyone's shouting over each other on TV, on social media, even in line at the grocery store, being calm, being measured, being quiet, that's radical and powerful. But silence isn't just about what you don't say. It's about how you carry yourself, your posture, your eyes, your pace. People pick up on those things. You can walk into your church meeting or senior golf club and without saying a word, signal confidence. And the folks around you, they feel it, even if they can't explain it. Let me share something that happened to my cousin Carl. He's 77, widowed, spends most mornings tending his rose garden and drinking tea on the porch. One day, during a family gathering, there was some disagreement between the younger folks. Nephews arguing over money, politics, the usual. Carl didn't interrupt, didn't roll his eyes. He just sat there, calm. After a few minutes, one of them said, "Uncle Carl, what do you think?" And when Carl spoke, he didn't give a lecture, just a sentence or two, thoughtful, balanced. And you could see it, the room shifted. His silence wasn't passive, it was intentional. And when he chose to speak, it mattered. That's the kind of presence we can all cultivate. And let's be honest, the older we get, the less we feel the need to prove anything. But earning respect, that never goes out of style. And doing it through silence, patience, and strength, that's something anyone can learn. Now maybe you've been in situations lately where you felt overlooked, at family dinners, at the doctor's office, or even among friends who talk more than they listen. I want to tell you this, silence doesn't mean invisibility. It doesn't mean giving up your voice. It means saving it for when it matters. And when you do speak, people will hear you, not just your words, but the life behind them, the decades of experience, the lessons learned, the love and the loss and the faith you've carried through the years. You're not just someone with stories, you are the story, and sometimes silence gives that story its greatest power. Let's keep talking in a minute, because I've got more to say about the small things, your body language, your timing, even the power of the pause, that can help you earn more respect without ever raising your voice. But for now, just think about this. When was the last time your silence spoke louder than your words? You know, I've always believed that silence, when used with intention, is one of the most underrated forms of strength. It's like a muscle most people forget to train. And yet, when you see someone who's mastered it, really mastered it, you know. You feel it. Take eye contact, for example. It seems like such a small thing, right? But holding someone's gaze, just enough to let them know you're present, not so much that it feels like a stare down, is powerful. It tells the other person, I see you, I'm here, I'm listening. And when you're not constantly jumping in to speak, when you give them room to talk and finish their thoughts, it changes the whole tone of the conversation. My friend Darlene, she's 71 and volunteers at a retirement center near Phoenix. She told me something beautiful once. Sometimes the best thing I give someone isn't tea advice. It's my full attention. She said she just sits with some of the residents, nods when they share their stories, maybe touches their hand gently. And you know what? They open up because they feel safe, they feel heard. And that's something we all want, isn't it? To feel like we matter. And sometimes the loudest way to say you matter is to say nothing at all and just be there, fully. Now, there's another side to this, the way we pause before we speak. You ever notice how some folks rush to fill silence like it is a fire that needs putting out? But the folks who pause, who breathe, who take a second before they answer, those are the ones who feel solid, like they're not reacting, they're responding. Let me tell you about something I noticed during a church committee meeting. We were discussing whether to renovate the community hall, a lot of strong opinions flying around, some good, some loud, some heated. Then one of the elders, Raymond, he's 80, doesn't speak much. He just sat quietly, arms folded, looking around. And when he finally did speak, it was just one sentence. What would this decision look like in 5 years? Silence. Everyone stopped. That one question shifted the whole room, not because it was loud or clever, but because it was timed. It was thoughtful. It came from a place of calm clarity. Timing matters. And when you've lived through wars, losses, new grandbabies, long road trips and short nights, you learn that timing is a form of wisdom. You don't need to jump in just to be heard. You wait until what you say actually adds something to the moment. Silence also teaches people how to treat you. When you're calm, measured, and not always offering up your thoughts like they're on sale, people learn to value your opinion. It's like a rare coin. You don't toss it into just any wishing well. You hold it, you wait, you give it when it counts. And speaking of how we carry ourselves, posture says a lot too. Not in a military way. Nobody needs to walk around like a sergeant, but in a grounded way. Shoulders back, chin up, movements with purpose. You walk into a room like you belong there, not with arrogance but with assurance. Folks over 60 have every right to take up space, to be seen and respected, and you don't have to demand it, just embody it. I remember watching a couple at the Botanical Gardens last spring, probably in their late 70s. The man wasn't saying much, just gently pushing his wife's wheelchair, nodding to passers-by. The way he carried himself, slow, deliberate, respectful, it was more powerful than any speech. You could tell this man had nothing to prove. His presence did the talking. Now let's talk about something that might surprise you. Not reacting. That alone can earn more respect than a clever comeback ever could. You know the moment when someone says something snide or foolish at the dinner table, and instead of biting back, you just look at them, maybe tilt your head slightly and stay quiet. That silence is loaded. It says, I heard you, I just don't think that deserves a response. And trust me, that lands heavier than any retort. People learn quickly that you're not to be provoked, that you're not rattled easily, that you choose your battles. And let me tell you, folks respect someone who has the strength to walk away from nonsense with their dignity intact. It reminds me of something my dad used to say when I was young. You don't have to win every argument. Sometimes you win by not stepping into it at all. I didn't understand it back then. I wanted to be right. But now I see how powerful that is. Silence doesn't mean surrender. It means self-control. And when you combine all these little pieces, eye contact, timing, posture, non-reaction, it creates something people feel even if they can't describe it. That's presence. That's gravity. That's the kind of quiet power that commands respect in any room at any age. You don't have to shout to be heard. You don't have to explain yourself to be understood. Sometimes the most profound respect comes when you speak less, but carry more. So if you've ever felt like your voice isn't as loud as others, remember, it's not about volume. It's about value. And folks know the difference. You ever been in a conversation where someone pauses, and in that quiet moment, you already know what they're going to say is important, even before they say a word? That's the kind of presence we've been talking about. But let's take it further now. Because silence doesn't just affect how people see you, it shapes how people learn from you, how they feel around you, how deeply your influence really runs. Think about the folks in your life who made the biggest impact on you. Maybe it was a parent, a coach, a pastor, or even a friend. Odds are it wasn't the one who talked the most or lectured the loudest. It was the one who listened when you needed to be heard. The one whose stillness made you feel safe enough to open up. The one whose silence made you think deeper. My grandfather was like that, never raised his voice, not even when the kids got wild on Sunday afternoons. He'd just give you a look, not angry, just steady, and that was enough to settle the room. It wasn't fear, it was respect. He didn't need to prove he was in charge. We just knew. There's something about a person who doesn't need to dominate a room but still holds it. That's leadership, not with force, but with focus, not with volume, but with vision, and it's something folks over 60 know better than anyone. Because by now, we've learned that shouting doesn't make someone right, that the wisest people often talk less, not because they don't have something to say, but because they've learned when to say it and how. Let's talk about family for a moment. You've probably had a few conversations lately that weren't easy, maybe with grown kids making choices you don't understand, or grandkids glued to their screens, barely looking up. It's tempting to correct, to offer advice, to jump in, but sometimes the best thing we can do is let the silence speak for us. I remember a moment with my daughter. She was 42 at the time, overwhelmed with work, motherhood, and trying to keep everything together. She came over for dinner, sat at my kitchen table, and just started venting. Everything came out. The frustrations, the doubts, the exhaustion. I didn't interrupt. I didn't offer solutions. I just listened. And when she was done, I took her hand, looked her in the eye, and said, "You're doing more than enough. I'm proud of you." That moment didn't need a long speech. It needed space. It needed stillness. And to this day, she tells me that was one of the most powerful conversations we ever had. See, silence gives room for others to be real, to be vulnerable. And when you give that gift to someone without rushing to fill it with your own voice, it builds a bridge stronger than any advice ever could. That applies in all kinds of relationships, with friends, neighbors, even strangers. You'd be surprised how many people just want someone who listens without judgment, someone who isn't waiting to speak, but actually taking them in. And here's the beautiful part. When you lead that way, when you teach through example and inspire through your presence, people lean in. They want to hear from you. They start to see you as a lighthouse in their lives, steady, quiet, and always there when it counts. Now, don't get me wrong. There are times to speak up. Silence isn't about staying quiet when something needs to be said. It's about speaking less, but meaning more. It's knowing when your words will help and when your presence is already doing the job. There's a man at my local men's group, James, 68, retired firefighter. He rarely says anything during our gatherings, but when he does, he always starts with something like, "I've been listening to what everyone said," and you can feel the room settle. Because we know if James is speaking, it's worth hearing. That kind of respect doesn't come from charisma or clever words. It comes from years of showing up, being steady, listening with care, and never using words carelessly. It's something anyone can cultivate. And it's especially powerful as we age. Because let's face it, the world moves fast. Too fast sometimes. And in all that noise, people are craving something real, something grounded. And when you walk into a room and bring that steady, quiet presence, people feel it, they notice. It's like the pause between musical notes, the silence in a church sanctuary before the service begins, that quiet moment before a golfer swings or a fisherman casts. There's strength there, preparation, focus, and you carry that in you, whether you know it or not. You don't need more words. You need to trust the strength behind the ones you already have. You know what's amazing? I've seen folks over 70, quiet, unassuming folks, have more impact in a room than any CEO or motivational speaker. Because their silence says, "I'm not here to impress, I'm here to connect," and that is unforgettable. So if you've ever doubted your voice because it's not the loudest, if you've ever felt invisible in the noise of this world, let me remind you, silence is not absence, it's presence, and it holds more power than most people realize. Your story, your wisdom, your patience, they all live in your quiet moments, and those moments, they teach, they lead, they inspire. You know, when we reach this stage of life, something shifts inside us. We stop chasing applause and start thinking more about what we're leaving behind. Not in terms of money or material things, but in the kind of example we set, the kind of presence we carry, the way people feel after being around us. And that's where the power of silence truly shines. Because silence, the kind that comes from strength, not fear, isn't just a way to get respect. It's a way to leave a mark, to build a legacy that lives on, not in loud speeches or long biographies, but in the quiet ways you made people feel seen, safe, and understood. I once asked my neighbor Harriet, who's 86 and as sharp as a tack, what she was most proud of in life. She didn't talk about awards or vacations or big moments. She said, "I think I'm proudest that people trusted me with their truth." And I'll never forget that, because that's what real influence looks like. It's not what we say about ourselves, it's how people remember feeling in our presence. And that's something you can offer starting today. You can start by slowing down your responses, letting others speak without rushing in, holding back judgment, looking people in the eye and letting them know, without saying much, that you're really there, that they're worth listening to. You can pause before reacting. Let silence create space instead of filling it with frustration or noise. Sometimes that moment of stillness is all it takes to de-escalate a situation or help someone feel heard. You can practice intentional silence, not to avoid hard conversations, but to let them breathe, to make sure your words, when they come, are rooted in clarity and care. And most of all, you can carry yourself in a way that speaks louder than words ever could. Whether it's at the community center, your place of worship, the garden club, or just on your daily walk around the block. Your presence, your calm, your thoughtful pauses, that's leadership, that's dignity. Now, I know there are times when being quiet doesn't feel powerful, times when the world seems to reward the loudest voice, the quickest reply, the boldest opinion. But don't let that noise fool you. True respect isn't shouted into existence. It's earned in stillness, in grace, in the way you make others feel respected too. Because the truth is, people remember kindness, they remember peace, they remember the one person in their life who didn't talk over them, who didn't try to fix everything, who just showed up with their whole heart and a calm spirit. Maybe that's you. Maybe that's the example you get to be, starting now or continuing quietly, as you've done for years. And if you've ever wondered whether your quiet strength makes a difference, let me tell you, it does. The world needs fewer performers and more listeners, fewer critics and more calm voices, fewer shouters and more steady souls. You, my friend, are exactly the kind of person who can show what that looks like. And if anything we talked about today resonated with you, if it reminded you of a moment in your life, a lesson someone taught you, or a time your silence made all the difference, I'd love to hear about it. Really, I would. Drop a comment below. Tell me about someone who earned your respect without saying much, or share a time when your quiet presence changed the room. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if you found this conversation meaningful, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with someone you care about. Maybe there's a friend, a spouse, a sibling, someone who needs to be reminded of the quiet strength they already carry inside. Because this world can be noisy. But you can be the calm. You can be the stillness that steadies others. You can be the wisdom in the silence. Thanks for spending this time with me. I'm honored to be part of your day. Take care of yourself and take your time. You don't have to say much to be deeply respected. You just have to be you.